So you are an engineer? You've done
No, sir.
BSc
Yes, sir.
in forensic sciences and cyber security.
So
Hmm?
cyber was one of our subjects in the BSc Forensic Science.
How deep they go?
I'm sorry, sir. Could you repeat the question?
How much in detail they go? They just tell the concepts, or they go further in detail?
Sir, it's an introduction to cyber forensics, in which we are introduced to the various type of cyber crimes, and in a few of it, like how to intercept cyber packets and how to undertake phishing attacks. A few of it we do practicals also, but it is more of an introductory course, sir.
Introductory course. So tell us something about yourself.
Um, so my name is Karishma Nair. I'm originally from the Palakkad district of Kerala, but my family has been settled in Mumbai. I have done my graduation in forensic science. I am passionate about public speaking, and I take interest in reading fiction, playing badminton, and watching TED Talks.
So you have interest in debate too, is it?
Yes, sir.
That's interesting. So and your subject is the public administration.
Yes, sir.
Main subject. So after doing BSc, you shifted to humanity, public administration. Hmm?
Yes, sir.
Now tell me, in public administration, they talk about rule of law.
Yes, sir.
What are the elements of rule of law?
Um, So, rule of law, there are two, three elements in rule of law. Firstly, that nobody is to be kept above law. Law is to be applicable to everyone equally. And it was, there are two more concepts, sir. I am not able to recollect them at present.
Okay, this is just main subject, you know. And what is governance?
So governance is basically problem solving, collective decision making for problem solving. So it is different from government, wherein it goes beyond government and it is more participatory to include the private sector as well as the civil society organizations.
So if I say that there are some principles of good governance, would you be able to tell me what are the principles of good governance?
Yes, sir. So, good governance is a qualitative form of governance which has certain characteristics. For example, citizen centricity, more of accountability, participation, transparency in governance, and equity and equality is maintained in governance. There is more responsiveness in the government, and there's a responsibility amongst the civil servants as well. So, when a few of these all of these qualities align together, the governance is known as good governance.
Okay. And there is some concept of e-governance.
Yes, sir.
So good governance means you have to understand people and govern the country or the society in a way that affects everybody um, in the for the betterment.
Yes,
Now
sir.
e-governance. What is e-governance?
Sir, e-governance is the utilization of information and communication technology in the government processes. This could be in the interaction of government with the people, with businesses, and amongst the government's different nodes as well, sir.
So okay, so that means interaction also in e-governance will be online.
Yes, sir.
So do
In
you think?
e-gov. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. So the e-governance is basically interaction with people online. And when you interact face to face, is there any difference in quality when you interact face to face and when you interact online?
So there, to my mind, there are two major differences. First is a positive difference as well as a negative difference. For a positive difference in e-governance, because there is a lack of discretion of the people interacting, public servants interacting, there is less chance of biasness that creeps in or corruption because everything has a digital record. Uh, which is why it is considered to be more streamlined. However, so a negative impact could be that in citizen centricity, a citizen likes to interact with a person or with a face, and there is more compassion when a person interacts when there is an offline interaction. So I think e-governance, while it revolutionized governance to make it more transparent and to make it faster, but on the flip side, we have lost that compassionate touch, which cannot come entirely with e-governance.
The compassion and empathy gets compromised in e-governance.
Sir, at present it does. I think we need to develop more mechanisms and we need to really dwell on how e-governance and compassion and empathy can be taken forward together.
Okay. There was a Digital India mission, and so many programs under this were announced. Can you recollect a few?
Sir, it had broadly 9 pillars. One of it include that BharatNet program to ensure connectivity amongst all people. Then it also had a skilling of a human resource to have a digitally empowered human resource, as well as e-office and e-government services also was part of the Digital India mission. Even manufacturing of electronic items in India was part of the Digital India mission, and digital literacy was one of the key pillars of Digital India mission. At present, I can recollect these names.
Recollect these. I see. I see. So I mean, when you talk of Digital India, these days during COVID, and for that matter, the education level being so much in a bad shape, and Kerala being little exception, but there also health situation is not that good. The health and education, these are core sectors that people are, basically need, and they're suffering. How, suppose you are in charge of a district and there is the Digital India infrastructure is around, would you like to use this infrastructure, and how to improve situation in education and health?
So digital connectivity is something that we take for granted, but in many rural areas, we still do not see digitally empowered people, especially for education. As a district collector, I would ensure that there is internet connectivity for at least a group of students. I'll try to ensure it to individual houses as well, but if not, at least for a group of students. And we can have collective resources, for example, e-boards, the digital boards that are present in schools, we can have them decentralized for the time being during COVID. So education through digital mechanisms can be provided at a localized level, even if people cannot reach to their schools. So for health, I think telemedicine is the way forward for, especially during COVID, when people are not able to travel to reach hospitals. I feel that we need to, our doctors and our health professionals are very fast in adopting these technologies, but the patients may not be as adoptive. So as a district, we would really like to educate the people about how they can use telemedicine, and how a database of where all such provisions is available in the district can be made, so that people can utilize telemedicine. On a larger scale, sir, the National Digital Health Mission is also envisaged, wherein we think that the entire health sector can be looked through to the lens of digitization. This means that we can have a database of all the doctors, of all the patients with their medical history, so that connectivity amongst people with the health services also enhance.
Suppose you you decide that you will use IT for improving quality of education. What are the problems you will face, according to?
So the very first problem would be of connectivity, because there might be people who fall in between the cracks.
It has gone up to blocks.
Okay,
the optical cables have gone up to, say, panchayats. That infrastructure you have. Now
sir,
then tell what exactly other problems you will face.
Sir, by connectivity, I meant that even within households, if there is one telephone, one phone in which internet connectivity is there, and there
Okay,
are
okay.
multiple students studying there. So I meant connectivity to each student within a household as well. Secondly, sir, the teacher training is a problem that we face, because we've known that especially in rural areas, in government schools, the adoption of technology amongst teachers is also not up to the mark. So we need to really train teachers on how to teach differently in the digital medium. And we also need to another problem will be education is not just about giving lectures through an online medium. We need more interaction and practical knowledge as well. So we need to look at a more hybrid mechanism and not just digital. So in a graded approach, we need to formulate a curriculum, what exactly can be taught through a digital medium, and where we will need to strike that right balance and form a hybrid model. So
Can it promote education of grown-up girls?
so
Because in
through
villages, the girl is grown up, they don't send her to school. I mean, Kerala may be exception. I don't know much about that. I'm talking about mostly North Indian and Western Indian.
Sir, it definitely is a very acute problem. We need to analyze what are the reasons behind girls dropping out. First could be the infrastructure present in schools. Many students drop out when they reach the menstrual age because lack of toilets in schools. Further, it could be the reason of lack of economic opportunities even after education. So they do not see any incentive in
Parents just don't send them. Parents are so protective about them, they don't send them.
Yes,
So
so
if you have your IT application for training, for teaching, they can study at home, isn't it?
yes, so
And
that
if
is a
you're
very good mechanism through which.
national open school system, isn't it?
Yes, sir, it definitely is a very bold step to teach students from their home if security is a concern. But we cannot solely rely on the digital infrastructure. We need to ensure that the girls go back to schools also. So we need to look at the security of schools and infrastructure of schools as well to see why is it that parents do not send their girls to school. As a start, we need to ensure that digital connectivity is there for these girls as well. But I do not think it comes as an alternative for school education completely.
So coming to again governance side, you might have heard there is a discussion about police reforms.
Yes, sir.
And in public administration, I mean, police reform is a major reform that is needed for governance, so for improving or reforming governance. What exactly are the problems according to you, and what should be done?
Sir, the umbrella of police reforms, we can visualize it in the form of the challenges for the personnel, the challenges in the force with the lack of infrastructure, the capability of police stations and the new weapons. And lastly, accountability and morale of the police is another problem. So in the first basket, if you look at the personnel, most of them are overworked. And because the population, we need 222, the UN ascribes we need 222 police per 1 lakh population, but we have only 180, which is a huge shortfall. Further, sir, the motivation and morale of these police forces not up to the mark, because we see that the image also about the police is not very well taken.
I mean, why morale is not high? Morale is very high. They can put anybody behind bars under UAPA or anything. So this morale is very high. They can, with the irrespective of who the person is, they can put people behind bars and for years.
So, but the morale should be to ensure that they do not misuse their authority also. So I meant morale in a positive sense. So that will come when there is more citizen centricity amongst the public, and even the accountability mechanism that I was
So
talking about.
one is the number of personnel.
Yes, sir.
People, what else could be? Because
So
more of them is.
For
Please go ahead.
accountability, the Prakash Singh judgment spoke about a 7-step process. We need a police complaints authority so that the people can complain against the police officers through an independent authority. Even so, the postings of the police personnel is now very politicized. So that can also be curbed through a police establishment board and a state security commission, which the Prakash Singh judgment also vouches for. So accountability as an umbrella.
That's right, but so many police services board people have, so many governments have created it, but things have not changed on the ground.
Sir, again, we need to have like an action taken a report of these institutions.
Somebody
Sir,
has to monitor it.
Yes,
So
sir, we
who
do
will
need a
monitor it?
monitor.
The government has to monitor, isn't it? Or do you think
Sir,
judiciary should monitor?
I think we can have a more participatory mechanisms, involve civil society organizations, the judiciary, as well as members from the government, so that it is a more stakeholder approach is taken for this monitoring mechanism, sir.
Don't you think there was a discussion about separating prosecution with law and order?
Yes, sir.
And that is why most of the cases get delayed. There is no investigation in time and so on and so forth. Do you think there is any future? Because you are now you have done forensic study science also. At present, the staff engaged in investigation is very inefficient. So maybe forensic sciences will give them some evidence to be more scientific. But at present, they are just using force to extract information from the accused. So do you think so forensic science can go a long way in first division of separating the two, and then use of forensic science liberally might help?
Yes, sir, I completely agree. In fact, the government is also trying to do that. Recently, a National Forensic Science University has been set up, and even our Home Minister has asked that for every crime for which the punishment is above 7 years, a forensic investigation has to take place, not just a police investigation, which includes having the investigation team should include a forensic science expert as well. So I think, sir, as you mentioned, because of our interrogation practices are parochial, at present the delays in judicial system is also high, and if forensic science is used widely, and even the police is well informed about how forensic science works, I think it will have a tremendous impact on criminal justice system as a whole. It can solve problems of many under trials in prison. It can solve problems of the judicial pendencies, and it can also enhance the law and order situation, because the police can now focus more on law and order, and we'll have a specialized team for investigation. So I completely support the separation.
There was a commission. There was a commission which went into the police criminal nexus.
Yes, sir.
Do you know which commission it was?
Sir, I have read about it, but at present,
was it Justice Verma?
Justice Verma Commission had spoken about it.
What did he say? Do you have any idea?
Sir, I had read that they spoke about,
because criminalization in politics is going on in a very big way.
Yes, sir.
Isn't it? Oh, there was one of the commissions. I am also forgetting the name. I think it was Justice Verma Commission. So criminalization of politics is going in a very big way.
Yes,
isn't
sir.
it?
Yes, sir.
And so many criminals are coming in parliament. So what can we do? Because any reform that you want to do in public administration, it has to go through parliament where politicians are sitting. Do you have any way to, suppose something the political class doesn't like, is not ready to accept readily? What is the process that can be adopted in democracy to ensure that they do listen and do something worthwhile?
Sir, in a democracy, the parliament is the voice of the people. So I think if we exert pressure through civil society, through the judiciary, through the media, that a dire need for reforms is present. At present, the political class gets away with not getting such reforms because they are not held accountable for not bringing up these reforms. And I feel it is coming once in a while in the Supreme Court, which is not a sustained effort, even from the civil society. So I think a campaign and a dedicated effort in this direction can help.
Now, last thing, have you heard of electoral bonds?
Yes, sir.
Now, as a debater, you have to tell me 3 points in favor and 3 points against. Maybe 2 points in favor, 2 points against. It will reduce time.
Sir, the points in favor include, firstly, that because at present all of the funding is by cash, an electoral bond will ensure that it is coming through the banking system. So we can remove the unaccounted cash from political funding.
No, it was earlier also 20,000 above through bank and less than 20,000 through cash, and now 20,000 has been reduced to 2,000. So cash was involved earlier also, even now it is there. Next point.
Sir, and again, the points against the electoral bonds is it has hampered transparency quite a bit, because they are anonymous bonds, and now even to the income tax they need not showcase the source of funding. Secondly, so foreign investors are also now foreign donors are also involved in electoral bonds, and shell companies can also be formed, because the limit on the profits of how much of a company can donate to political parties also reduced. So I think it has created more problems than it has solved. Because
foreign donors may be involved, but do you have any evidence that they are involved? That will be more serious.
Sir, earlier this provision was not available for them at all. So now if we open an avenue, they might come in, and I think we need to take a precautionary principle that what if they do come in. So I feel that even if we don't have hard evidence now, just the option available is itself a dangerous precedent, sir.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Singh, please.
So, Karishma,
yes, sir.
Why did you choose forensic science?
So when I was in class 11th and 12th, I had biotechnology as one of my subjects, and most of the theory that we read about DNA sequencing and DNA processing, and further all the theory that we read had forensic science as one of its applications. That got me interested in what exactly is forensic science, and I did a little bit of research on the internet, and I found it to be a very fascinating field, and it has huge implications in the situation of crime in the country, which is why I got interested in forensic science.
But then you have not opted for IPS as your first choice. That's your second choice, right?
Yes, sir.
So why? I mean, you were interested in forensic science. Why didn't you pursue your career in forensic science as an expert rather than opting for civil services?
So when I was in college, I had a few experiences. I got opportunities in my leadership roles as the general secretary of college, as well as I got the opportunity to coordinate a national forensic exposition, and all of that experiences with the ground level reality that an administrator can impact many more lives. I thought that I have an inclination for development, and I read a little bit more of that. I took public administration while preparing, and I then came to know what exactly an administrator does, which I found that there is much more diversity of roles and a higher scope of impact on people's lives, which is why I've opted for administrative services.
What happened to your interest in forensic science then?
So the interest is still there. I feel that the skills that I've learned in forensic science will help me in my administrative career as well, sir.
How?
Yes, sir. So forensic science has taught me to have a clear eye for detail, and to ensure that I do not jump to conclusions. All of the aspects has to be covered properly before jumping into conclusions. I have a vigor for scientific temperament, which is needed in the administration, as the challenges.
Those are very very general answers. I mean, that's with everything. When being an engineer, I can say that I've got eye for detail and everything, because we are You're taught to be very methodical and should look for higher details. And be specific. How forensic science can be used in administration, civil administration? Those are general
Sir,
answers. I don't buy that.
Sir, I agree it is not a direct link. I am now interested more in administration, but I do not think that my interest for forensic science has reduced. I feel that it is opening a wide range.
Charisma, what happens now? Charisma, what happens if you get selected, posted as DM, and you say that I don't have interest here, I've got interest somewhere else? And
Sir, the decision to stick with civil services.
Chalo, anyway, leave it. You are born and brought up in Mumbai, right?
Yes, sir.
Then why didn't you opt Maharashtra as your home state? Why did you go for Kerala? You anyway do not have any connection with Kerala, except that your parents are from Kerala.
Yes, sir. I have a strong connection with Kerala. It is my home state because I belong.
No,
from
that's
there.
fine. But then you are born and brought up in Mumbai. Ideally, you should have filled Maharashtra as your home cattle.
Sir, I think that I would want to stay closer to my parents who would be settling back in Kerala as well. And I have a deeper connection with Kerala. And Maharashtra is my second option. I wouldn't mind getting Maharashtra as well. But given a preference, I chose Kerala above Maharashtra.
Anyways. Now, tell me, what is the biggest challenge in front of Mumbai? I'm not going to ask questions related to Kerala. I'll ask related to Mumbai. So what is the biggest challenge that Mumbai is going to face?
Sir, the pressure of population on Mumbai is one of the biggest challenges, which causes other challenges for Mumbai. For example, the traffic congestion or the real estate crunch. All of it is a consequence of the real symptom, which is that the population pressure on Mumbai is very high.
That's been there for decades. I lived in Mumbai 10 years back, and then also we used to say the same thing. What's new? I mean, population pressure on Mumbai is there for decades now. We are talking about pressure on Mumbai.
Sir, I feel this pressure, but is increasing because we see with climate change, we have sea level rising, so we cannot expand the city more, and even rising the city above, we have floor space index limitations. So
then go north. Move north beyond Dahisar.
Yes, sir. As a solution, I think now Mumbai is trying to develop satellite cities and towns, like Navi Mumbai is one of them. As I mentioned, it's a challenge, but they are the BMC and the rest of the planners are trying to overcome this challenge through innovative means.
Okay, as an administrator, what would be your priorities? List me out 3 priorities of yours. Or okay, forget about 3 priorities. First, topmost priority. What would be your topmost priority if you become an IAS officer?
Sir, in Mumbai?
I don't know. You have to decide. You before going for this profession, you would not have decided Mumbai or Kerala, no?
Yes,
Tell me your topmost priority as an administrator.
So while the topmost priority would be district specific, depending on which district I will be working on. But if there is one, if you're asking for one topic that is close to my heart, which I would want to work for, it would be women empowerment, sir.
What exactly would you like to do?
Sir, I feel a proper study of the district about how the situation of women is needed. Data on the ground level on what is the employment rate of women in that area, the education rate of women in that area. And I'll try to analyze what are the specific problems that women face through engagement with the women folk themselves. And then I would look
at just wait. Suppose you get posted anywhere, any place X, and whatever data that you want is available with you. I'll give you data very first day. Then what? So whatever data that you need, assume that everything is available with you now. Now tell me what.
Sir, if I know that how many girl students are not going to school, and I know which area they are from, I think I will take a personal interest in visiting those areas and finding out why they aren't going to schools. If it is a problem from the side of the schools, I will arrange a meeting with the schools to ensure that their problems of education is
There is no
completely solved.
school. Karishma, there is no school there.
So then my first priority will be to have a school in the district, sir, because education is one of the bedrocks for any form of development. So if there is no school in the district, then my top priority would be to have an educational institution in that district.
How would you do that? So now you know that there's no school. Now what will you do? What steps?
Sir, as a DM, I will survey which land can be utilized for a school. I will engage with the local panchayats and the local governance institutions and have a meeting that we are proposing to have a school there and take the views of the citizens as well. After the area is allocated, I will look for a contractor to build up the school so that infrastructure is in place. Once the infrastructure is in place, I will simultaneously write for a recruitment in that college, in the school. I'm not sure if I think it is through the state government, then I will interact with the state government as well to have teachers there.
Who gives approval? Who has got authority to open a school?
Sir, I'm not aware of who exactly is.
Then okay, leave it. So, now that you have decided that Kerala is your home state, why Kerala has not been able to contain COVID spread?
Sir, I think the problem of COVID is rampant throughout the country, but it's more pressing in Kerala because firstly, the population density in Kerala is very high. There are high amount of urban centers in Kerala. Urbanization is also high, which ensures that which creates a good atmosphere for the disease to spread. And in between, there were a few laxities. The stringent measures that Kerala had kept earlier of quarantine, it was relaxed over the period of time, which led to a surge in cases. So at present, now the government is trying to isolate as many areas as possible where the impact of COVID is higher, and a vaccination drive is also taking place rampantly. So I think these are the reasons why Kerala is not able to control COVID entirely.
Now, there was a news that Kerala is the only state which in India which has got all kind of mutants, whether it is alpha, beta, gamma, delta plus, everything. Now, what is mutation and what are mutants?
Sir, the genetic material that the virus has is made of RNA, and when the RNA replicates, there are changes in the nucleotides because it's not a perfect replication. So the new form of a variant is a new form of the same virus, which is caused by changes that happen in replication of their genetic materials.
My last question. There are different type of vaccines that are available. There are different methods that are used to arrive at those vaccines. Can you name me 5 different methods that are used to derive those vaccines?
Sir, there is an inactivated form of virus, which is a form of vaccination. There is a DNA.
Which is the vaccine? You are wait. When
Yes.
you're talking about methods, you tell me the vaccine also.
So Covishield uses an inactivated form of the virus.
No. Next.
Sir, then there is an mRNA form of vaccination, which uses the mRNA. Moderna and Pfizer uses the mRNA version. Then, sir, I'm sorry, sir, I'm not able to recollect more forms.
Okay, Karishma, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Karishma, you have mentioned one of your hobbies as reading fiction.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me what is the difference between fiction and illusion?
Sir, I'm sorry, sir.
Or are they the same thing?
Sir, I do not have a clear distinction in my mind, so I cannot do justice to the answer. I do not know the clear distinction.
Okay, okay. What's the last thing that you have read in fiction?
Sir, I read this book called All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony
Okay.
Downs. It is a book about the lives of people in the World War II. And it is
Okay.
specifically about two characters, about a French girl and a German boy, and the experiences they have during the war, and how I like the book because it shows that even though they are in different sides of the war, they have similar experiences of loss of a loved one and how they try to overcome the challenges. So I think fiction helps us to understand the human aspects of any global event as well. So
Okay, okay. Have you read Viktor Frankl's book on the same theme, Man's Search for Meaning?
no, sir, I haven't had the opportunity to read.
Okay, okay. You have also mentioned watching TED Talks as one of your hobby.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so can you tell me one TED Talk that has impacted you quite much?
Sir, it is a TED Talk by Miss Adichie from Nigeria, and she talks about why it is important to not have a single story. So she's a Nigerian author who went to the US, and she was talking about how we have biases in our fiction and in the storytelling arena as well, which is why even now when we think of Africa as a continent, we think of poverty, we think of hunger, we do not think about the human talent which might be available there, we do not think of the potential that the region has. So she was mentioning about how it is important to question the narrative that we are sold by the West or by the larger narrative, and how a small minority view should also be taken into account, because it is easy to fall for biases with just one narrative. So
Okay, okay, that's good. Playing badminton is also one of your hobbies.
yes, sir.
So tell me one difference in rules in singles events and doubles events.
So the size of the court itself is different, because
Okay.
in the singles event, the side court is the smaller one, while in the doubles event the side court is the outer boundary of the court. So
Okay, okay. And also while scoring points, is there a difference related to the outside rules? Like how the shuttle falls outside? Is there a difference?
I'm sorry, sir, I have to check on that. I'm not aware of.
Okay, okay. While so let me ask it in another way. When there's a doubles event and the shuttle falls outside the primary court within
Okay.
the boundaries which are just closer to the net. So is it a point in doubles or not?
Sir, outside the primary court, within near the net, is that the
Yeah,
question?
yeah, yeah.
Sir, I'm assuming it is. I'm not really sure. I do not know. I do not think I know that. I'll have to check on that.
Okay, okay. Karishma, you are from Mumbai,
Yes, sir.
and Mumbai witnessed the death of a Bollywood actor in 2020.
Yes, sir.
Then it was widely discussed that the way the initial investigation happened, or the way police reached there initially, it actually led to a lot of evidence going missing. And you are a student of forensics, so in such cases, what is the standard operating procedure to go for collecting evidence?
Sir, I feel we need to have a forensic scientist to be involved in the evidence collection, because they are better trained and better equipped to collect these evidences. Then a proper the first procedure that is taking place is a proper barricading of the crime scene, so that people from outside are not able to enter. Further, the perimeter of the body is also well secured, and photography of the position of the body with respect to different positions, which could be a bird's eye view or to scale as well, is taken. Then, sir, there are certain points wherein doorknobs or we see certain points where we find we think that presence of fingerprint could be there. So there we have to take fingerprint testing. We develop the fingerprint, a latent fingerprint, and a fingerprint is lifted. If there is any I'm sorry, sir, I missed a point that once the body is documented, it is sent for postmortem, and the rest of the evidence is collected. It is packed properly, it is sealed, and a chain of command is also signed that who is collecting the evidence and at what time it is being collected. And then the evidence has to be sent to the forensic science lab with a proper seal. So.
Okay, good. Karishma, your home state is Kerala. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And recently there was a controversy wherein an industrial group decided to shift out of Kerala, and
Yes,
they
sir.
criticized the state government publicly. Related to that, see, there is a lot of prevalence of unemployment in Kerala, and also issues related to dowry deaths. Do you think that Kerala, despite doing so well on human capital, hasn't really been able to provide the kind of employment that they could have with such a set of well-educated people? Do you think that? And somewhere it has actually impacted such social evils like dowry, which may be a result of unemployment.
Yes, sir. It is a well-documented fact that the industrial sector's contribution to Kerala's GDP is not up to the mark. It is just a mere 12%, which is even less than the national average of 17%, which is why Kerala has a high unemployment rate of about 14%, which is the highest in major states in India. The governments, erstwhile governments and the present government also realizes the fact that Kerala cannot sustain its economy without a strong industry, which is why now the governments are focusing on investment in niche industries, be it the biotechnology industry. They are building more textile parks. They are ensuring that food processing industry is in place. So, sir, I do agree with your statement that Kerala has not done enough on the economic front, while its social infrastructure and social parameters is doing well. So I think the challenge for Kerala henceforth would be to absorb these unemployed youth, because of high education, their aspirations is also high, so they do not go for blue collar jobs. So we need to create quality jobs, and I think that is a challenge that this present government and future governments also have to cater to. So.
Okay, but there was also another part to my question wherein I asked about the social impact of it. Dowry deaths are happening in Kerala, and that is a very serious issue. So how's that related?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry for missing out on that question. Sir, the lack of employment opportunities has caused many social evils, which is resulting in the high levels of alcoholism in Kerala, high drug abuse in Kerala. And one of the consequences could also be dowry, because individuals themselves are not able to earn that much with their jobs. They think that women can be seen as a commodity. And through marriage, they can have economic empowerment. There is thus a higher pressure on the families of women to save wealth to be passed on to men. And I feel, sir, recently the government has, the governor of Kerala has spoken about how a bond should be signed with individuals when they graduate from college, that if they undertake dowry, then their degrees can also be revoked. So I think it's a good step, because it realizes the importance of education and how education should act as an empowerment of, and should not, an educated youth should never take part in a social menace like dowry. So I think if we solve the unemployment problem, we can curb many social issues, and dowry is definitely one of them as well. So.
Okay. One last question, Karishma. You have mentioned debating as one of your hobbies.
Yes.
And when the Sabarimala judgment happened, there were many women groups in Kerala which had protested against the judgment. So if you have to defend the viewpoint of the women's associations, how would you do that?
So the arguments I would raise would be that firstly, the temple of Lord Ayappa, the specific temple that we are talking about, is where Lord Ayappa takes the form of a Naishtik brahmachari. So it is not that women are not allowed to pray to Ayappa as a deity, but to this specific deity, which has a separate identity. Women are allowed to pray to Lord Ayappa in other temples, and they themselves respect the fact that their deity in this location is a Naishtik brahmachari, and they would not themselves willfully want to go against the wish of the deity. Further, sir, they feel that this verdict of the Supreme Court goes against their cultural sentiments, and which is why they feel that they should. They are the statement that was going around was willing to wait. The women think that they themselves are willing to wait for them to reach that age in which they can visit their deity in the Naishtik brahmachari forms.
Okay. Thank you, Karishma.
Thank you.
Karishma, this is your second time you are going to face interview, isn't
Yes,
it?
sir. Yes, sir.
What happened last time?
Sir, I scored 160 in my interview last year.
And written, how have you done written this time? Is better than last year or it is the same?
Sir, I
Written
think
exam.
it is better than last year. I hope also that it's better than last year.
So in interview, you are more confident this year, is it?
Sir, I
Initially.
think that I've learned from a few mistakes that I did last time, so I'm trying to work on them, and I
So
hope
we
that
hope to see you in the list. One thing I wanted to tell you, you look very confident. I think your way of conversation is also good. You are quite thorough on the issues. Wherever you're not thorough, you're applying your mind. I think that's the good, because nobody can claim to know everything. So main thing is whether you are applying your mind properly or not. I think that that is important. Public ad, your subject is very vast, and everybody knows something about this. So you have to read some more about your subject.
Okay, sir.
Current affairs we have not talked about. I think current affairs also do get the attention gets there. And if
Okay.
you are not thorough on current affairs, then it gives a very bad impression. So
Yes.
just prepare that. And your interview, how much time you have for interview?
So it's on 17th of September, 2
So
months.
you have got a lot of time. You have got a lot
Yes.
of time. I think invest these days, these months in learning and studying more,
Yes, sir.
and don't miss out on the Hindu and Indian Express editorials, particularly. Other
Yes, sir.
papers and interviews also you can have, but these are more unbiased or relatively. So
Okay, sir.
just go confidently. I think you have a very good chance. Best of luck to you.
Thank you, sir.
Singh sir?
Karishma,
Yes.
see, age is on your side. That's a plus point. But see, there's a difference between fascination and objectivity. See, being fascinated about something would not yield you much. You understand why didn't you get more marks? You just got 160, while last year you would have been what? Barely 22 years, right?
Yes, sir.
You would have had you been selected, you probably would have been one of the youngest. See,
Yes, sir.
those who come and that must have been your first attempt, right?
Yes, sir.
So first attempt interview at the youngest age of 22, you should have got not less than 180, 185, 190. You know where you missed it? You have created more of a fascination about something, right? Come to the reality. See, you do not have a magic wand. You want to become an IAS officer. Why? You don't know. You don't know. You have heard about something and then you got to answer. Be realistic and think about it. See, the ship has sailed. There has to be a story, and that should be very realistic. You studied in Maharashtra. You're born and brought up in Maharashtra. You have chosen Kerala as your home state, but you are not at all aware about Kerala. Your answer at least does not reflect your depth of knowledge related to Kerala. it shows that you are not at all aware about Kerala. That is the second point. Third point, when you're talking about, I asked you one thing. What is the topmost? Was the most important thing that is there for you, which you would like to achieve? You said, okay, you want to work for women. What? From women, you came down to education for only girls. Why not child education? So see, you got to have clarity where exactly problem lies. You're not aware, or probably you have not given a thought to it. Why kids are not going to school? It might be the case that there is no school. Can a DM start a school in himself or herself? No, he cannot. There are procedures. So don't be in that fascinating world of fascination. Come down to reality. See, why this question is asked? Why you want to become an IS officer? Just to see whether you have given a thought to yourself as what is your motive of life. What, see, everybody has got a vision for himself or herself. The question, they are not interested in knowing why you want to become an IS officer. They want to know what is the vision that you have set for yourself. What is that one vision that you have for your life? So when you have a vision for your life, and in your case, the way you have narrated is women empowerment, then have you given enough thought to that vision? See, one thing you want to do in your life and you have not given enough thought to it, that doesn't portray very good image of you, right? Then they would say, okay, this girl is under fascination. And then, especially in your case, your interview is in the end of September, right? You
Yes, sir.
falter, and then it will be a slippery path. They'll straight away jump to objective questions. Tell me the population of Kerala. Tell me the population of India. Tell me how many numbers of COVID cases are there in Kerala. Like that. See, try to understand. They have been asking this question for, by that time, they would have been asking this question for more than a month and a half. So they would be totally bored. And if you give those stereotype answers where you simply project that you have not given enough thought to your one cherished goal of life, in that case, straight away they would jump to objective question that, okay, this candidate is not serious. We are also, why should we be serious in selecting the candidate who herself is not interested in her selection? So that is the mistake you commit. I'm sure you must have given 100% correct answer in your previous attempt also. Tell me yes or not. You would have given every answer to every question that they must have asked last year. Is it true or false? Is right or wrong?
Sir, I did fumble on. Yes, sir, but I understand your point.
See, it's not the answer that is important. It's the intent that is important. When that intent, that application is missing, you'll miss the bus. Then the game would be based on your mains. If you want to really score well in your interview, think about it. See, you got to understand. Those answers like from the question is not important. From forensic to IS, why you want to become IS after forensic? I don't want to give you answer. I can, but I want you to think about it. What do you want to do? Those are, see, you are a girl who want to do something for women. So these are some of the personal questions, something very, very, very close to the personality. There should not be any split in your answer, in your personality. That becomes evident that somebody has told you and you're giving that answer. Don't do that, right?
So, but
Think about
I
it.
have, okay.
Yeah.
Sir, I have a question. So at present, I wouldn't know how exactly the administration works. So everything that I will say might seem idealistic because I don't know how on the ground
It's
it is
not
going to.
it's not about being idealistic. It's about taking those constraints as for granted. Try to understand. See, why I was dragging you to the corner, why I was pushing you to the corner. I knew where exactly would you land. Rather than setting up a very high goals, you could have taken a very small step. I want to work. My it's not about being in my district administration. It's about, in general, my goal is to work towards women empowerment. What would you do at the ground level as a district administrator? I would like to ensure that their participation in education is to the max. It's not that they should go and I'll do the data survey. Can you do that? Can you do data survey? When you don't know, why do you say that? You don't know, na? Can you do that or not? Something, whether you will be able to open a school or not. See, Karishma, you just need to think about yourself. Why you want to do this, and that's it. You know, don't buy answers from somebody else. Be genuine. Be in yourself. That's it. Right.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
In that case, then you will be able to appreciate the question. Idea is to check you, not your answer. Right?
Yes, sir.
Best of luck.
Karishma.
Yes, sir.
Karishma, I think you are pretty. One thing is good for you, that you are pretty confident. That is a good trait to have. What I would say is that you understand the questions well, okay, but try to be brief. Try to understand the crux of the question. It will be better, so that when you it is normally what happens is that if you tend to increase the duration of your answer, then probably either they will switch to an entirely unrelated aspect, or they will try to ask something objective. If you give a brief answer, what happens is that they will probably be satisfied with your answer, and they may ask something more about it or explore more areas of your DAF. So then you will have a better chance of scoring well. So try to be brief when you are answering questions, and you have written a lot of things in your hobbies. Okay, you have a research internship, debating, TED Talks. So people will tend to pick up. And since you are from and another thing, most important thing, that if you are from Mumbai and you have Kerala as your home state, and Maharashtra and Kerala are currently contributing the most COVID cases in the country. It has been the trend since the last 6 months. So you will be asked some questions on it, that despite so much focus, Kerala model was also appreciated quite much initially, but then somewhere it faltered maybe. So that is a very important thing that you must keep following, and try to be brief, try to be focused in your answers. The brief you are, the better. Okay, all the best.
So Karishma, Karishma, you have to do Karishma. Karishma means magic. Okay.
Yeah, age is on your side.
And the caution that has been given is only to ensure that you don't like brief answers. If you keep talking, then you waste a lot of time. Only 35 minutes are available with you. In these 35 minutes, if they can cover more points, they'll be able to know you better.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that should be the idea. Not being very elaborate, as long as you are able to convey it in a brief manner. So best of luck to you. I think you have go confidently and
Yes.
keep things in mind, critically examine things, and I'm sure things should be all right this time. Best of luck.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another update from Civil's Daily.